Sorry, guys, I'm like 2 minutes late. I was just sitting here reading reading over one of the articles that we're about to discuss and not paying attention to the time. Good morning, Fish and Golf with First Blood. Guys, it's a hold the line kind of day. Trump won New Hampshire to no one's surprise. Kari Lake just rebutted a bribery attempt, and Greg Abbott says, fuck you, we're going to put some razor wire in place. Let's do this. Good morning. Okay, so it's not really big news. Nobody's surprised. Donald Trump won New Hampshire. All right, now going into the New Hampshire primary, it's Trump versus Nikki Haley. And I mean, let's be real. Haley really never had a legitimate chance. Now, I say that with a caveat. She never had a legitimate chance. New Hampshire was surprisingly close, right? You know, Trump won by it wasn't nearly the lockout that Iowa was. Which will come to you as no surprise once I get into a few more of these particular news items related to the story. But what was it, like 56 to 42 or something? With some percentage just kind of out on lesser candidates. But anyway, so I've got this article here from Fox News. Now, Fox is not your friend, but they're slightly less psychotically biased than CNN, MSNBC, and those. But so Trump, honored by New Hampshire win, says Republican Party is very united. I don't know about all that, Donald. Very united? I'd say the Republican voting base is very united. We saw that clearly with Iowa. And to a lesser extent, we saw that clearly with New Hampshire, based on some of the other information that we're about to cover. But Trump won the first in the nation primary Tuesday night, defeating former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley. Trump also won the Iowa caucuses last week. Now that right there, it says first in the nation primary, and yes, it's even though we covered the Iowa caucuses, the Iowa caucuses they're like, okay. Not everybody understands this. I'll give you a quick overview. Not every state has a primary, and not every state has a caucus. Right? They have either or. In both cases, what you're looking at is the mechanism by which the party, that's the Democrat Party or the Republican Party or whatever party, it's the mechanism by which the party selects their nominee. Right? Because once you get to a general election ticket, there's one nominee per party. And we all unite behind the one nominee. There is some hoopla right now about how the Democrats are not allowing a primary to go forward. I will say in their defense, in all fairness, there is typically not primary challenge to the incumbent when you're talking about the national presidential general election. I cannot think of an example where they have primaried an incumbent president. That said, there's nothing to say that you can't do it. Sergeant Major asks, how was voter turnout? I'm going to get to that in just a second. So I'm not ignoring your question. It's one of the talking points that I want to cover going forward this morning. So you have primaries, you have caucuses. A primary runs like any election that you're accustomed to, where you go to the polls, you cast a vote, right? We use the primary system here in Georgia, which I'm not entirely comfortable with for various reasons, not least of which is this. A caucus is run privately by the party, right? The Republican Party, the Democrat Party, Green Party, the Libertarian Party, they are not actually government entities. They are private entities that support the candidacy of an applicant to an elected job position, right? Highlands Husky says, morning, going to rewatch from the beginning. Can't wait to hear your thoughts on the Lake video. I haven't gotten to it yet. We've only been at this for about 6 minutes, Husky, so we're going to get there. So, the primary is run by the state. It's an official election run by the state government. The caucus is a private activity run by the party. Both processes select the nominee for the state, and whoever wins all the primaries and caucuses is the one that goes on the ballot for the general election. So, New Hampshire's the first in the nation primary, only insofar as it's the first one to have a government-controlled primary process. Iowa is the first in the nation to make a selection. And of course, we all know from last week that Trump absolutely murdered him at Iowa, which was amazing for two reasons. Iowa had a level of election interference going on that appears to have been reproduced in New Hampshire, and we'll cover that in just a moment. And it happened in the middle of an historic blizzard, and Republicans still came out in numbers to support Donald Trump. That should warm your hearts enormously. So let's talk a little bit about what happened. We've got, wait a minute. Okay, so Charlie Kirk shared this video
against Joe Biden.
This is an interview with a voter in exit polling, right?
And why did you vote for Nikki Haley?
It's a vote against Trump. I think it would be better to have her against Biden in the elections than it would be Trump and her.
Do you consider yourself generally independent, Republican, or Democrat?
Democrat.
So when you undeclared, you voted for Nikki Haley. If it was Nikki Haley against Joe Biden in a general election, who are you voting for?
Joe Biden.
Okay, so what you're seeing here is the abuse and perversion of the process. Like I said, the primary and the caucuses, that is a process for the individual private parties to select their candidate. It is not intended to be a process by which all the Americans select their candidate. It's the people who want to vote for a Republican select the Republican they want to vote for. Now, there's nothing in the rules to stop this from happening. And the things that I'm about to show you and describe as dirty pool are not illegal. They're just dirty. But that's how Democrats operate. Don't get me wrong. I'm not suggesting that Democrats are above breaking the law. I mean, let's be real. Joe Biden is currently the most prolific facilitator of human trafficking on the planet. But in this particular case, they're not breaking the law. They're just engaged in some active I won't even necessarily call it election rigging. It's interfering. It's breaking in. Xander says, I disagree. Even in our country, it's necessary to switch over in the primary. I'm not saying it's not a useful tactic. I'm saying it's a dirty tactic. In this particular case, I'm going to make the case for it's overwhelming use. And the fact of its overwhelming use in this particular case is what actually makes Donald Trump's win impressive. Because here we have, wait, I've got another one. I had another one. I could have sworn I had another one. Damn. Okay. I lost it. I had two examples of somebody making the statement. But here I've got Charlie Kirk tweeting, ultra-liberal Hanover, New Hampshire had just 841 Republican votes in the 2020 general election. Tonight, the same town, now let that sink in, they had 841 Republican votes in the 2020 general election. Tonight, the same town has 1,472 votes for Nikki Haley. Now, he says it's Democrat election interference enabled by an insane open primary system. I don't entirely agree. Like I said, I think it's dirty pool. But, yeah. Xandermax says, okay, no, you're making an excellent point there. Xandermax says we don't have a Republican running for sheriff, so if you want to vote for sheriff, you'll have to do it in the Democrat primary. That is correct. That's a very different situation, though. We live in a place where there just aren't Republicans in this county for any practical purpose. If a Republican runs against a Democrat in Rockdale County, they're basically guaranteed to lose by 70%. That's where we are. That's very different, though, than what we're talking about on the national scale. Liz Wheeler says 70% of Nikki Haley voters in New Hampshire are not registered Republicans, according to exit poll. Now, that sounds a little more credible than the Charlie Kirk things, but you got Charlie Kirk, a known right-wing commentator, Liz Wheeler, a known right-wing commentator, both saying that that there's some shenanigans going on there. And okay, I just saw it freeze over here. I see Highland said audio skipping. Y'all let me know if you keep experiencing problems, but it looks like I may be having some issues with Restream right now. I'm gonna try closing up a couple of things on this computer. Oh, I really don't have anything else running on here. Hold on. Oh, I've got Discord and Stream running. Let's kill those. Y'all let me know if that seems to have improved the performance. So, I'll show you this then.
Democrat, or we asked
this is from MSNBC explaining the same
coming
thing.
in the polls. Do you identify as a Republican? Do you identify as a Democrat, or do you identify as an independent? And here's what we found in this exit poll so far, and I think this jumps right out at you. A minority of voters in this first wave of the exit poll in the Republican primary identify as Republicans. A majority, 53%, identify as either independents, 45%, or, and this is a high number historically, 8% identify as Democrats.
Xander Max says you could argue that she's attracting the crossover vote. You could argue that if you just wanted to play devil's advocate and take up the clearly incorrect position, then you could argue that. Okay. That was a little bitchy and indirect. Let me clarify. There is some reason to believe that the Democrats would not terribly mind having Nikki Haley in, because she is a neocon warmonger. A Nikki Haley presidency essentially guarantees that Biden's expansion of military action and the ever march to not just World War III. We keep hearing people talk about Civil War, World War III, and forever wars. This might come as a shock. They're all right. The objective of the Democrat and the leftists at Davos, what they want is civil war in every country, World War III, where every country is engaged in some kind of war with another country, right? Like I explained the other day, World War III is not going to look like Axis and Allies, where all the countries on one side line up and all the countries on the other side line up, and they're on opposite sides of one line fighting over, who gets to pave the future. That's not what World War III looks like. What World War III looks like is most of the countries on the planet are engaged in some sort of open conflict with another country. So, Taiwan may only be fighting with China, while China is also dealing with fighting a war with the U.S. and a separate proxy war with the U.S. through Taiwan, and that spills over into South and North Korea. Russia is engaged in hot conflict across the Ukraine with U.S. involvement and UN intervention. The Houthi pirates get chunks of the Middle East involved in war between India, U.S., and various trading partners. And it's not one war. It's war everywhere. And at the same time, the individual resources of all those countries are being strained, plus posterity measures, right? Rising inflation, loss of liberty across the globe, and governments being toppled. And the point to the pseudo-forever World War III Civil War paradigm is to destabilize the entire planet to the point that the only alternative is some function of one world government, right? Some entity like the UN or NATO becoming the ultimate authority, where the organization is entirely, every country reports to the UN, and the UN is, or NATO, and it probably won't be either of those. It'll be some agglomeration of the two, or some organization that is similarly structured. And the result will be that every country across the planet abolishes all of their distinct law practices, replaces them with a unified global law, and everything that anybody wants to do has to be cleared through that one world government channel. That's the shot that's the moonshot that they're working on, right? So, Highland Husky says, can't wait to see cyber war technology advances and countermeasures. Oh, that reminds me. I want to give you a top comment badge. And because I had to change things with the way the camera's positioned, that flipping thing isn't above the image anymore the way it's supposed to be. So let me rearrange that real quick. That should do the trick. And it didn't. Well, shit. Oh, nope. I see what I did. I fixed it. Legion says it would be a consortium of multinational corporations, not a government. Incorrect. It would begin as a consortium of multinational corporations, which would establish what would be recognizable only as a government. Just because it doesn't take the same exact form as a government, what a government is, if it's making the rules, is the thing that you're describing as a consortium of multinational corporations. That's not even a theory that we have to debate or pluck out of thin air. That's literally what they discuss at Davos. That's what the leftists are into. All caps WEF tists. Rod says they're trying to establish themselves as lords and masters over us and do away with all that freedom and liberty bullshit. Yeah, because yep. So we've also got
at the numbers among
CNN
Trump voters
showing the same
70% of them, according to our exit polls, are registered Republicans. Donald Trump, his support, 27% of his voters are registered undeclareds or independents. 3% were unregistered before today. Look at how that compares with Nikki Haley. It's a complete reversal. It's an alternate universe. Among Haley voters, 70% are registered undeclareds. Only 27% are registered Republicans.
So the vast majority of those who voted for Haley, Legion says, okay, fine, Shadowrun dystopia. Correct. Yes, 100% Shadowrun dystopia. And that, my man, that's like a whole show that we could do on its own. So, yeah, so even according to CNN polls, the vast majority of Nikki Haley's supporters in the New Hampshire primary were not Republicans. They were listed as unregistered, and they were clear that they meant not registered as Republicans, which is to say these were Democrats doing the voting. I spent a lot longer on that than I intended to. Let me double check something real quick, because I want to get through all of this morning. So I think my first hit this morning, $10:30, and it's a vacant house. So yes, it's a vacant house in Stone. Okay, so I've got to be in Stone Mountain sometime before 11 o'clock. Yeah, that should give you time to, yeah. So I've got time. Let's get, I want to chew through all of this. So here's the next thing I want to talk about. Like I said, this morning is a Hold the Line episode, and I'm saving the best for last. I'm saving the best for last for two reasons. One, because it'll be cool to close on. And two, I don't think I need to spend quite as much time on it because I talked about it yesterday, and because I'm pretty sure we'll be going back to it pretty soon. So this is the other one that's trending in the news right now. Kari Lake says powerful people tried to bribe her to leave politics. Kari Lake, former news anchor and failed Arizona gubernatorial candidate, fuck you, Newsweek. This article's from Newsweek, claimed on Saturday that she was recently offered a bribe to stay out of politics. They called her the failed gubernatorial candidate. There are more people who intelligently believe that Epstein killed himself than there are who intelligently believe that the Arizona gubernatorial race that Kari Lake lost was as secure as the 2020 race. Right? The Arizona race that Lake lost in was shadier and more obviously compromised and crooked than even the theft of Donald Trump's second term. Go look at some of the articles. Look at the lawsuits. Look at the suits that Kari Lake has won in the Arizona case. It's insane. It's amazing that the entire fucking state government isn't in prison right now. It really is a testament to the two-tier system and the essentially legal immunity of merely being a Democrat. Legion says hundreds of voting machines broken / free and fair election. Pick one. Exactly. And the hundreds of machines that were broken, that were conveniently out of service in the most conservative parts of Arizona, just coincidentally, is essentially the least shady shit that came out of that election. So to say she's the failed Arizona gubernatorial candidate is barely even correct in the most generous and technical sense of the phrase. So Lake First Rose, shut the fuck up. We want to get to the article. We want to get to the story. On Saturday, Lake spoke to the Conservative Political Action Conference, CPAC, an annual event featuring appearances from conservative lawmakers. During her appearance, the former gubernatorial candidate claimed that only days ago, people came to her door and offered a bribe in exchange for her staying out of politics. And these articles read like, oh, she claims that this happened. I can't wait to see the one that says claims without evidence, because that's always their next go-to. But here we go. Colin Rugg on Twitter. Arizona Republican Party Chair Jeff Dewitt caught on secret recording trying to bribe Kari Lake not to run for the Senate. So this
is there a number at which
this is the chair of the Arizona GOP. And that sounds a lot to me like we have agents and representatives within our state GOPs that are Democrat plants, that are, if not originally Democrat plants, have been compromised by the DNC. Sergeant Major says Kari for VP. I'd be totally comfortable with it. I'd be totally comfortable with a smoking hot first lady and a smoking hot VP. But not for president. So, in fairness, I wouldn't be totally comfortable with a female VP at all. Well, I can pretty much guarantee that Kari would be more competent than Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris is the poster for repealing the 17th Amendment.
I can be bought.
not be bought?
That's what it's about.
You can take a pause for a couple of years.
No.
And then go right back to what you're doing.
No. 10 million, 20 million, 30, no. A billion, no. This is not about money. This is about our country.
Now, devil's advocate. Let me be fair. Let me be perfectly fair in this. It sounds like Lake is the one that did the recording. And hey, fair play. I've got a couple of devices that I keep on me all the time because I've run into bumps here and there. You guys have heard my story about the incident with the police where everything went perfectly and then the dumb sons of bitches wrote my license plate number down as the at fault in a nearby serious car accident. And that if I hadn't had my recording devices and done my due diligence at the time of the stop, I'd have been fucked three ways from Sunday. But I did those careful things, right? We've talked about First Amendment auditors always record the police type of stuff on the show a few times. You know, I've got a couple of things that I've got a body camera that I use. I've got a pen with a little spy cam in it that I use, which gets surprisingly good audio recording. A dedicated audio recorder, and of course you've always got your, 99% of us always have that smartphone handy. So I'm all for recording certain conversations, important conversations. If I'm being approached by a party official in an official capacity, abso-fucking-lutely I'm going to record that. And so here's my let's be fair. She knows she's recording and he doesn't. So she could be doing a little bit of virtue signaling here, 10 million, 20 million, 30 million, a billion. No, it's not about money, it's about the country. Okay. She does know that she's about to be basically she's planning on releasing this. So she's going to do what she needs to do to look her best in this. But let's face it too, her having released this recording, she has to some extent married herself to that persona. So let's imagine for a moment in that let's be fair devil's advocate framing that I just laid out. Let's imagine for a moment that she doesn't have the integrity that she appears to have based based on this character that she's portraying here. Let's just assume for a moment, devil's advocate, that she's actually just crooked as hell, and what she's doing here is virtue signaling and putting on a play for the people. The fact is this: if that's the case, she knows that she's doing that, and she knows damn well, if she's smart enough to be playing that flip-flop, she knows damn well that as soon as this audio is published, then in a very practical sense, she has married herself to that persona and is stuck with it even if it wasn't authentic to begin with. Now, that doesn't mean that there can't be backslide, but it means that the balance of probability leans toward whether she's straight or not, she has to at least maintain that straight edge. But this is another moment of holding the line, and that's what this show's all about this morning, is holding the line.
I think it's disturbing that they would even, that anybody would think this is.
No, to be fair, even me, I'll say this. I want a fresh face right now, for the reason that I've never seen anyone, I can't think of a single person in a federal race who's lost, ran in and won. I can't think of it. If you can think of it, let me know.
I am not going to let these people who hate our country tell me not to run. You should call them and tell them to get behind me. So what's going on? I'm assuming this is our friend.
This is.
And then,
You don't go away. No position to scratch and
We do something about it. Kill me. I'm not willing to accept that. Then I'm.
okay, and then I want to listen to the end of it here as well. So, Waller says if she's releasing a tape like this, she's removing herself to get offers like this. Oh, yes. If she's releasing a tape like this, she is essentially that's a great point. So she's married to her own narrative here, her own persona that she's put out here, but she's also saying, hey, don't come at me with your bullshit. She's just signaled to all of these powerful people, to all of the people that might try to bribe somebody into taking a particular political position or particular political strategic action. She's signaling to all of them, no, don't come at me with your bullshit. And in one way, that may be a loss. That may be a ding, because if let's assume that Kari Lake is the most rock-ribbed, rock-solid conservative Republican there is, and she's not going to be getting these offers anymore, it would be nice to have somebody solidly rock-ribbed and resistant and ready to hold the line who appeared sufficiently amenable to such offers as to serve as bait to initiate sting operations against the kind of crooks that are going to come out and try to bribe a conservative politician into kowtowing to the DNC. So my general analysis here, I can go a little over this morning, but I can't go over forever. I want to get to the last little bit of this recording, and then I want to give you my general analysis on it.
But you pause.
This is the battles right now, Jeff.
Pause. And then you fill your coffers.
No, the battle is right now. The battle is right now, and we don't have time to pause on this battlefield.
You're not. You can't scratch their back. It's not afraid of you.
Yeah.
You don't have anything to offer them. And they're sitting around people that have stuff to offer them. You know what I mean? It's just, it's a back scratching club. That's all DC is. It's a big back scratching club. You're in no position to scratch anybody's back, and you've already made it known that if you get there, you're not going to scratch anybody's back. I don't scratch people's back. You know, I've been on the outs for a lot of people for a long time, but I don't scratch backs. You know?
Okay. That right there. It's a big back scratching club, and not only are you not in a position to scratch anybody's back, you've made it clear that you won't scratch anybody's back. She's making it even more clear here that she's not going to trade favors with crooks, right? And then he says, I don't scratch people's backs. Really? You're here as the chair of your state GOP, offering a fucking bribe to one of the candidates that your party has tasked you to support. And you have the unmitigated temerity to say that you don't scratch people's backs? Really? How in the hell are you coming to offer a bribe which is only clearly beneficial to your opposing party without at least Kari Lake in the confines of what we assume you, Jeff Dewitt, are assuming to be a private conversation? How can you expect her to hear you say, I don't scratch people's backs, here, take this bribe? Because he said, look, we've got companies that will just put you on their payroll for the next 2 years. You don't scratch people's backs? What the fuck are you doing right now, Jeff? You're as compromised as John Roberts. Might as well get you a black robe and ask you how you feel about gender mutilation. You sack of shit. I hope this ends his fucking career, and hopefully a lot of other politicians in the Arizona GOP. And let me say this: if he's in the business of doing this kind of back scratching to where he's bringing Democrat offers to Republican politicians and attempting to bribe them to take politically disadvantageous tactical moves in support of the enemy, then I would go so far as to say that he and probably a large chunk of the leadership in his GOP are compromised, and it's no wonder that the Arizona DNC was able to steal a gubernatorial race and part of a presidential election without any significant pushback. This cancer, when you look at this cancer merely existing in one of our state GOPs, it's not hard to imagine, to understand how 2020 went so wrong. It was obviously stolen, and then lawsuits were filed. They were dismissed on standing and bullshit rules rulings on latches and timing and all kind of other bullshit without ever being adjudicated on the merits, without ever even being heard on the merits. No evidence presented, just dismissed out of hand. And then you see shit like this. You see shit like Brian Kemp refusing to prosecute Fani Willis for what are obviously significant crimes, up to and including the White House involvement in the illegal prosecution of Donald Trump in Georgia. And it's very difficult to come to any other conclusion than the uniparty has compromised the state GOPs. It's very, very difficult to come to any other reasonable conclusion than that your state Republican Party is just a fucking skin suit with a Democrat lizard in it. But Kari Lake held her position, held the line, and did not take the bribe. She's reported it. Well, okay, I shouldn't say that. The reporting on this is that the audio has been leaked. The evidence available does not include that it's Kari Lake herself that leaked the audio, or that it's Kari Lake herself that recorded the audio. That is an assumption that I'm making based on the evidence available. But in fairness, that evidence is limited to the context of the recording itself. It is a reasonable assertion. It is a It is an analytic conclusion that is sufficient to justify an investigation into the suspicion, but it is by no means an absolute declaration of fact. Now, all that said, that's my general analysis. There is that if we're seeing evidence of this happening in one GOP, and we look at the things that have been going on within the very weak GOP, producing weak candidates, then it's very difficult to look at the Republican Party nationally as anything other than a skin suit with a Democrat lizard in it. It's a face mask that was peeled off of the Tree of Liberty and stapled to the clown of fucking global tyranny. So, let me move on to the last story, last but not least. Yesterday we talked about the Supreme Court decision, and there was almost immediately some interesting developments. So the Supreme Court decision, and I love this, the way the headlines read, what SCOTUS ruled is that the feds are allowed to cut the razor wire. That's not exactly correct. It's more correct to say that the feds ruled that the security of the national border is the jurisdictional responsibility of the federal government. And for that reason, the federal government has the authority to cut the razor wire. And there's an important distinction there. Unverified Bear says SCOTUS. And yeah, I may just have to steal that for the rest of all time. And y'all, we talked about this when she was going through the nomination process. Barrett was not my favorite candidate, was not my favorite pick, but I never expected her to fail this miserably. I never expected her to just say, you know what? I hate my children. And I want them to be eaten by brown monsters. I never expected that from Barrett. I expected her to be squishy on a bunch of woman lib bullshit. I never expected that she was just going to say, you know what? Fuck this country. It should be burned down by the invading horde of barbarians and psychopaths. Let's just do that. Fuck this country. I never expected that from Barrett, but that's what we got. So, following the Supreme Court decision, Governor Abbott has showed us all why he's in a wheelchair. And it's because his nuts are so gigantic that he just can't walk around with them. Because in the face of it, Abbott, standing ground despite SCOTUS decision siding with feds, he shared this on Twitter, photos of his National Guard standing their ground. The Texas National Guard continues to hold the line in Eagle Pass. Texas will not back down from our efforts to secure the border in Biden's absence. Texas will not back down. No. That's not what I wanted it to do, but I can still work with it. Texas will not back down from our efforts to secure the border in Biden's absence. So, although the feds won this order, Governor Abbott shared pictures on X, yada, yada, yada. It's been a back and forth battle between the state of Texas aggressive initiatives to increase border security and the federal government trying to stop them. On Monday, Supreme Court ruled the federal government remains supreme. The courts weren't willing to reverse 200 years of immigration policy on the issue. St. Edward's University political science professor Brian Smith said. Here's the thing. The feds, Legion, that's exactly the image that ran through my head. Is Stan's dad walking along with his nuts in a wheelbarrow. Okay, so I mean that's huge, guys. That's the big one. He's actually sending more razor wire to the border, and that's hard to argue with. I hate to do it, guys, but I got a message here. I'm gonna have to go ahead and hang this one up. Thanks for watching this morning. We love you, and we will see you tomorrow. But we're not done talking about this. We're gonna end up coming back to this story again and again and again. Take care, guys. Be safe.